So to nobody's surprise, at least if you pay attention to college football, USC has done it again. They have gone out and landed an elite prospect in the class of 2026, and they continue to retain the number one recruiting class in the country. Not just based on volume. It certainly helps. Not every guy's a five-star recruit. You can't have a class of entirely five-star recruits, but Talanoa Ili, pretty close to being a five-star recruit. Top 80 player nationally, number 4 linebacker according to the 24/7 Sports composite ranking, and top 5 by just about every metric you look at. 6'3", 215 pounds. I'm sure he can add a little bit more weight, but I mean, this is pretty built out. I have liked this guy's film for a really, really long time. There's nothing not to like. He is indeed a prototypical modern-day linebacker, I think, in a lot of ways, and just the caliber of athlete that has not historically in recent history, I won't say historically, recent history, he has not wound up at USC, not consistently enough. Well, now all of a sudden, USC's starting to land those sorts of guys. And it's not just the offensive players like Pepe, the offensive tackle, or Mark Bowman, the 5-star tight end, who I've talked about here on the show. But, flipping Tamahini Tupui from Oregon along the defensive line, really, really good pickup. Amongst other blue-chip defensive linemen and defensive players that they've gone out and picked up. Albert Hill, a corner, another guy that I like. So this class just continues to grow. It continues to get some really elite prospects, and the momentum around USC is palpable. It is very real. It is not made up. It is not imaginary. On the trail, they have a floor. They're probably the only class right now in the middle of June I'd say has a floor of a top 5 class. Like Ohio State has a couple of 5-star commits, 15 players overall. That could slip down to 6 or 7 at one point in time if they were to lose, one of those players or something. Like, I'm not predicting that to happen. I'm just saying it's reasonable. USC's class feels way too stacked with talent and too many players just overall to fall outside of the top 5. Now, the context that I wanted to add to this is this should not change anybody's expectations for the Trojans in the year 2025, or frankly, in the year 2026. Now, this attack on the high school recruiting trail, that sounds negative. This run of success, recruiting-wise for USC, has been a long time coming. Lincoln Riley should have been doing this from the start. I will get back to that. But just you wait, especially those of you that engage in the internet space. When USC loses a game this year, their win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, is 7.5. I can see him going over that. Kind of depends on what we're getting from Jaden Mayava. But what you will see this year, because of the offseason USC is having, is you will see, I think, more casual college football fans that are serious enough to follow recruiting, but not serious enough to think about what I'm about to say, will jump to the conclusion of USC should be great this year. Look at the way they've recruited in the offseason. What are you getting all those recruits for? Well, they looked at the results of the last 2 years when they were not recruiting as well, when they were transfer portal heavy, and it wasn't good enough. So the context to the USC 2026 recruiting heater that they are on, I think they'll get somewhere in the mid-30s, which is a massive, massive volume of players, especially nowadays in the age of the transfer portal. Typically, big classes that have this many blue chip recruits in it are topping out around 25, and USC has been over that for quite some time. Don't let it influence what your expectations are for them this year. Yes, the high school recruiting game is still incredibly important. I have another podcast here at this network, which I enjoy doing, and I got a question recently from a listener about the importance of high school recruiting. And, well, does it matter as much as it used to? I feel like it doesn't, because you can just go out in the portal. Let me give you the top 10 classes right now in 2026 with a notable surprise, admittedly. admittedly, there's a notable surprise. But USC, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M, Penn State, Miami, LSU, Rutgers. 23 commits with 4 blue chippers there for the Scarlet Knights, according to 24/7's rankings. So which of those programs is not fully committed to winning a national championship? Rutgers, probably the only answer in there. I don't think they'll last there in the top 10. Maybe I'll explore that with Brian Smith later this week. But you still see the heavy hitters, the big brands, going after their high school classes, attacking it, going out and getting the best players. And yeah, they're still active in the transfer portal, but it does not mean you just disregard this sort of stuff. But I was just thinking about this because this is what I think about all the time. College football. And I just thought, I bet you're going to have people that are going to throw USC's 2026 recruiting class at the Trojans this year as a jab. Like, yeah, all those recruits and you still can't win games. Well, yeah, we're really going to help them win this year because they're not on campus yet. But the other point that I want to make with USC and this recruiting class is there is no reason and no excuse that this shouldn't have been happening from the moment Lincoln Riley got there. Do you remember the hire of Lincoln Riley to USC was so big? Even Colin Cowherd gave it a whole segment and talked about it a bunch. Now, granted, USC only has to hold a practice for him to discuss them on his show, but it was a massive. He left Oklahoma. He's going to USC. Oh my gosh. He's going to revitalize the Trojans to where they used to be. And it's just taking him going into year 4 to realize maybe we should change the recruiting landscape around here. Is it all on him? No. Is it 80+% on him? I believe so. You have to have an administration that is on board, especially with NIL, to go out and recruit the way USC is now. And they finally are. But my response to that defense, which I've heard from USC fans, well, the administration wasn't on board. Why is that not a top priority for you as a head coach taking that job in that moment, leaving a school like Oklahoma, which Brent Venables has shown can still be recruited at in a really, really high level? How are you not asking the question? Because remember, an interview goes both ways. I'm sure many of you, like myself, have had job interviews before. And on the one hand, you're primarily the interviewee. But then a good employer will say, what questions do you have for us? Well, if Lincoln Riley wasn't asking, what's your NIL situation? How are you ready to adapt to this? What can we do on the recruiting trail? Or if he just wasn't placing the necessary emphasis that he needed to on that aspect of the program, that falls on him. So the final thought on this class is, any of the Trojan fans out there, I don't think there are that many of them, quite frankly, at least not in my experience. Any of the Trojan fans out there that would like Lincoln Riley gone if they struggle again this year, this recruiting class, ask Florida fans, this recruiting class will be a saving grace, because Lincoln Riley will go to his athletic director, Jen Cohen, at the end of the year if they go 5-7 and say, hey, I know this wasn't the season we wanted. I'm disappointed, and I know what we have to do in order to get better. But hey, I've got this top-ranked recruiting class. You can't let that fall apart. So this marriage is just going to continue. And you know what? It's fun to talk about, so I'm okay with that. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.